Hello and welcome once again to another episode of From the Heart. This show, as always, is brought to you by the West Virginia Library Commission and the American Heart Association. I'm your host, Kevin Pauley, Communications and Marketing Director for the American Heart Association. Well, one of the things we've talked about many times on this show is the importance of finding community partners in the work that we do. Whether that's looking at what we do nationally or what we're doing right here in West Virginia, our community partners really can make the difference in moving the needle forward when it comes to addressing public health. Well, here in West Virginia, we've been very fortunate to work lockstep with a fantastic partner in Highmark, West Virginia. And one of the things that we're very proud of is that for the last year and this year, we've been able to work with them through very generous grants that they've given us to really get work out there to our kids in our elementary schools and to just get public information campaigns out there about the importance of knowing about vaping and about CPR. So today I'm joined by a very special guest. Kathy, are you there?
I am here.
All right. Kathy, welcome to the show. We are so glad to have you here, and we're so glad to be able to talk about this partnership with Highmark. How are things on your end? I know it's definitely been a busy year where you're at there in Parkersburg.
Yeah, it's been a very busy year, and I don't really see that slowing down much. I'm sure it's the same with you, Kevin.
No, that is very true. There's very little downtime, that's for sure. Well, thank you for joining us today, because I'm so excited to get to talk with you about this. Now, you and I have worked together many, many years ago with the Mission Lifeline campaign here in West Virginia, and a fantastic partnership arose from that. And we've continued to have Highmark support in our various events that we do, the Heart Walks, Heart Balls, and all of that. But it's this grant work that I'm very, very excited to talk about today, because this work is truly making a unique impact in the community. It's not just at an event, and it's not just connected to that. It's actually meeting people where they are and getting the word out through various things. So let's talk a little bit about our partnership. And what is it about the American Heart Association's work, Kathy, that makes Highmark continue to keep supporting what we do year after year?
Oh, thanks, Kevin. The thing that I really appreciate about the American Heart Association is that your passion for improving the health and lives of the citizens of West Virginia, and that's exactly the same mission and goal that we have here at the Highmark West Virginia Charitable Fund for Health. So you're right, we have partnered now for the past many, many years. You mentioned Mission Lifeline. That was a project several years ago, and we've done other projects throughout the years.
Oh, yes.
So again, it's your passion and what the American Heart Association does that matches up very well with us.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing about it. Everything that you and I have ever worked on together, it's always amazing. Like our outlooks and our outcome desires are like almost exactly the same thing, which is great, because again, when we're looking for those community partners, it's important to have people who have skin in the game and really, come at it from that aspect. Again, looking all the way back to Mission Lifeline, it's been years now that we've partnered, and we've seen great improvements and outcomes here in West Virginia. Just on a side note, your work there with the charitable fund. Talk a little bit about how Highmark is getting out there in the community and making connections like this to help move that needle.
No, absolutely. So, Kevin, in July of 21, the Highmark Foundation launched the Charitable Fund for Health here in West Virginia. We have always partnered with the Highmark Foundation, and again, Highmark out of Pennsylvania. They are a private charitable fund by Highmark. And we never really had a fund here in West Virginia of our own. So in 2021 in July, we were able to launch that charitable fund. That is a $28 million fund that we have. And we look to grant out somewhere around $1.8 million a year to projects like what we're doing here today. So it's been a wild ride, really, since July of 21. We hit the ground running immediately, trying to work on multiple projects, everything from dental health to substance use disorder, and certainly what we're doing here with the Heart Association.
Well, one thing about it, I mean, it's hard to believe it's only been 3 years. I mean, you've done so much in such a short amount of time. And again, the key thing there, again, is looking at how you can move the needle. And I love that you're addressing things that we face here in West Virginia. Dental issues are a big one. We're working out, through our Target BP program, we're working with dentists and dental clinics, all over the state, just to get people aware of like blood pressure and just going to a regular dental checkup at least once a year, because dental health and heart health are completely related. And I'm glad to hear you're addressing just other issues. There are so many social determinants of health that we know here in Appalachia, that are major factors. And it's great having a community partner who is looking at the same sort of thing, of looking at how do we make improvements, how do we meet people where they are, and how do we make a difference. So kudos to you for developing it, having the personal West Virginia campaign, and again, for all the work you've already been doing. So let's start by talking about the grant that we had from last year. So looking at that grant from last year, we had a big focus on vaping, because here in West Virginia, we know that the statistic that came out over the time of the pandemic was that we lead the nation in 8th graders who vape. And that's like one of those things when you hear it, like you can't fathom that's real, but it is. So we know that vaping is something that has really taken hold here in the Appalachian region, and especially here in West Virginia, where we already were facing, having, above the national average adult smoking rates in our state. And now vaping, of course, I don't think you can go on any street corner and not find a vape shop somewhere. They're complete eyesores, but they're all over. So why was it, for last year in particular, why was it that vaping was the really hot topic to address, with what we were doing? And we'll talk about the campaign in a minute, but let's talk about just what the urgency was for Highmark to get involved with us in addressing vaping.
Well, Kevin, it was pretty much the same thing that you're describing. We recognize that vaping is an issue, especially for our children in the middle school, even as low as elementary school. We were learning. And, frankly, I learned a lot in this partnership with you and the American Heart Association as we worked through this. I learned things that I didn't know about vaping, and we learned things that how vaping is hidden in plain sight, things like a marker, things like a hoodie zippy thing that, that is hidden in plain sight. So, again, it was the importance of doing something for children. We wanted to make sure that we tried to address it, make this campaign, to get the word out, to the awareness of it. So it was a great campaign. The positive feedback that we have heard from this has been phenomenal. So we were doing the right things, and it's turned out really great.
Yeah, I could definitely say the excitement around that campaign was really twofold. I mean, obviously, we were so glad to have the public awareness component. We'll talk about that in a minute. But really what was great was being able to use our youth markets team to get out to who are already going out to schools and talking to kids about the importance of heart health and things of that nature. But to be able to use that as a way to also get in to talk to these kids about vaping and to talk about what the problems are, and that it's not as harmless as they've been led to think it is. I mean, I remember one of the things we had in discussion, Kathy, and this is one of the things that really shocked me was, hearing about, and unfortunately here in West Virginia, we lead the nation in grandparents who are raising their grandchildren. I mean, the opioid epidemic has many, many levels of impact. But that was one of those where we found out that there were grandparents who were buying vaping devices for their grandchildren because they didn't know what they were. They thought it was harmless. They thought it was just something that smelled good and tasted good or whatever. They were not aware that they were giving their grandchildren something that had nicotine in it. They had no clue. And when you think about that, that's so terrifying to know that people were inadvertently, buying things for their grandchildren that were literally putting nicotine into their body. I mean, it's that kind of stuff that makes you just, I mean, if I had hair, I'd be pulling it out. It's crazy to think that we're dealing with this here, in 2023 and 2024. What was it like for you, looking at these issues? Did that kind of I mean, I'm sure it probably raised a lot of eyebrows there at Highmark.
It most certainly did. And, Kevin, to your point, I think that parents and grandparents thought that vaping was the lesser of the evil.
Yes.
They didn't want them to smoke. So they thought that vaping was a harmless thing that they could do in lieu of smoking. But as you know, and what we found out through this whole process, that's certainly not the case. And it's very addictive, and that just simply aids to, further health problems and something that we want to try to address early on. And that was why it was important that we did the campaign. And again, the positive feedback that we got from that was phenomenal. So I know people saw it and they were paying attention, and it worked.
And that's really a key point. It was so glad we were so happy to hear back from the schools that they were like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you're talking to our kids about this, because we just caught, another student with one of those devices, and, or we just found out that, someone's doing it at home. Like, they were seeing it, the teachers are definitely seeing it regularly. So it was great. I know they were very excited when we came in with our youth markets teams and the backing of Highmark to be able to address this particular thing. Now, on the public awareness side, which is where you and I worked very, very closely, I'm very thrilled that we were able to have a very two-pronged approach, and that was using radio with iHeartRadio in Huntington. We were able to make a more teen-focused hit, which is one of the things that you and I had talked about, ad nauseum, that it can't be us talking to teens.
Right.
It's got to be teen to teen. It's got to be peer to peer. And we had wonderful spots with J.R. Ash, who was the president of West Virginia Rays, and he did a wonderful job. He was so passionate to help out. And then, of course, we were able to have the other side of it, which was educating the parents and grandparents. And that's where, of course, we had the wonderful TV spot with Yvonne. We're going to take a look at that now. This spot is really one of those, I'm so glad we got to put this together. And it really did. It was all over the southern West Virginia area, because we were able to partner with our friends at WCHS to get it out there. And take a look now at this. This is such an important spot. It's still relevant. Even though it's a year old, it is still absolutely relevant. So let's take a look at that now.
Parents, grandparents, it's time for a wake-up call. Tobacco companies are targeting our children. West Virginia is #1 in the nation in middle schoolers who vape. Vape companies make products that are colorful and flavored like candy. Worse, they can be hidden in plain sight. Products like hoodies and pens are made to disguise the danger within. Vape liquids contain metals and dangerous chemicals that can damage lungs and impact brain development, and they can even kill. Talk to your kids about vaping. It may just save their lives.
And again, very, very important to have that messaging out there. This spot was shown all over, all throughout last year. And, Kathy, what was it like for you to get Yvonne involved with this particular spot?
Well, Kevin, I think you touched on it. We wanted to have someone's voice that was going to be able to speak to the parents and the grandparents, and I think Yvonne does a fabulous job. We've used her on multiple occasions.
Oh,
Again,
yes.
Yvonne is the president of the Highmark Foundation, and she just does a wonderful job, so knowledgeable, and I think that voice of hers is very commanding.
Yes.
The moment you hear her voice in that commercial, you immediately look. So I think it did what we intended it to do, was to, really get the word out to the parents and grandparents. And fill them in on all of those hidden dangers of vaping and what to look for.
Well, again, you talk about a voice. Yvonne has a wonderful voice, like truly, and we'll talk about how we got her involved with this year's campaign as well, because that voice is so important. And I think the spot, like you said, was very well received, and it definitely was one that people paid attention to. When you look at last year's campaign, how did Highmark feel about it? Did you feel it was successful? Were you happy with the results that you were hearing from around the state?
Oh, gosh. Yes, absolutely, Kevin. When we did that grant, coming into it, you guys were already in the schools, which made this so much easier. So, you went into, I believe, maybe over 50 schools at the end of the grant, maybe even 60, that you were able to get out to these schools and really dig in and, again, working with the students. And that was just the cherry on the top of the cake. Is exactly what we needed, was to have those kids hear from other kids on the perils of vaping. And we were very happy with the results. And, again, happy with everything that we had heard coming out of it, and we know we were able to move the needle on vaping.
And that, again, is what it's all about. Now, of course, now we come into 2024, and we've got another grant, which is fantastic. So, again, we appreciate that, because that partnership really does matter. But this year, we decided to change up the focus a little bit. So we had addressed vaping last year, and again, year-round campaign, so it was a lot of messaging out there. But we wanted to change it up this year, and this year, turning the focus to CPR. Which is something that we, of course, especially on a national level, we are really all in on CPR. When you look at our nation of lifesavers, Damar Hamlin from the Buffalo Bills, who'd had, the cardiac arrest during the game, he has been a massive force for that particular thing. But what was it from Highmark's standpoint that you wanted to make the switch to CPR this year, from your all's point of view?
Well, again, we wanted to partner with the American Heart Association to do something that I know that you're very good at. You're very good at getting that word out and doing a CPR. And this isn't the first time that we've worked with you about CPR.
No.
I remember doing something down at Huntington High School several years ago. We did with kids and the actual training and that sort of thing. So again, it was getting the word out that CPR is important, that you don't need to be an expert, but
right.
you do need to have that basic understanding of CPR. And it is something that is a skill that could save a life. And you know, when we were working through this, again, I always learn something, Kevin, when I'm working with you. But, you know, I learned about CPR and, you know, the beat and keeping up the beat. And we just found it to be a phenomenal program. And we applaud what you're doing. And just let's keep getting the word out there. Let's keep getting people trained. Let's keep getting the kids trained who are living at home with their parents and grandparents. So I think it's a phenomenal thing for us to do. And let's keep up the good work.
Well, it definitely is one of those things. We are always proponents of CPR, especially here in West Virginia, because we are a more rural state. And again, going all the way back to Mission Lifeline, that was a major focus about that, was because there are just places in West Virginia that if you call 911, you know, you've done the right thing by calling, but it could take them 30 to 45 minutes, possibly even an hour to get someone out to where you are. So anybody doing CPR at that point is always going to be a blessing, because it really genuinely can make a difference. So, you know, it's funny. It all ties back to where we first started with Mission Lifeline. It continues to have those ramifications are still being felt. So if you ever wanted to know if Mission Lifeline paid off, boy, it sure did, because now we have this kind of stuff going on. And I'm so glad that we can talk about that. As you said, with CPR, it's one of those things where everybody, you know, can learn it. You don't have to be an expert. And the good thing is, I always remind people, there are Good Samaritan laws in play right here in West Virginia. So that if you were to try to help someone with, you know, who had a cardiac arrest and it doesn't work out, you're not held responsible. You were trying to save a life. So I always remind people of that. No matter where you are in this state, if you are helping perform CPR, you are protected by Good Samaritan law. So there's no reason not to try. We've definitely made hands-only CPR one of the most important things we talk to people about, because it takes out the guesswork of the breaths. All we're doing is compressions, and we always remind people, if you can remember the song "Staying Alive," you can get the compressions down. You're doing it right. For this year's campaign, you know, Kathy, what is Highmark sort of hoping to achieve with what we're doing, not only in the schools but also with the public awareness campaign?
Well, I think what we're trying to achieve is just what we've talked about. You know, again, chances are that if you ever have to perform CPR, it's going to be on someone you know, someone close to you. And, you know, learning that made that campaign all the more important to us, because, again, you're just never thinking that this is something that you're going to have to do, but we want you to be aware. And as we've stressed multiple times, you don't need to be an expert, and you don't need to be worried about you're doing it wrong. But again, do it. Do it. Call 911 and then do those. Again, you know, some of the things that I learned through this process was the fact that it's probably going to be on someone that you know, and that it's not that hard to do. So again, hands-on CPR is what we need to keep promoting, and we need to keep training individuals to do this. It is making a difference, and we know it.
Absolutely. You know, we have been such, when we developed the campaign behind hands-only CPR, we knew that this could be something that would make a difference, and it has. We've actually seen, you know, the numbers have gone up with regards to people who have admitted they feel more comfortable performing CPR because of that. So again, really huge to be able to bring that here to West Virginia. And on that note, let's take a look now at the PSA that we're running for this year that you'll see with our good friends up at WDTV and Fox 10. So this is northern central West Virginia. It's getting really hit with this year. So let's take a look now at this year's campaign for CPR.
I suddenly collapsed. I could hardly breathe. Everything went dark.
I'm gonna help you. I'm calling 911.
Thankfully, 2 wings of light landed on my chest, and I was brought back to life. A stranger, a fearless hero, touched my heart and saved my life. Our hands are wings of life.
Join the Nation of Lifesavers. Learn hands-only CPR. Visit heart.org/nation.
And there you have it. Again, this campaign is so vital to what we're doing here in West Virginia. With the fact that we do live in such a rural state, the more people who know CPR, the more people willing to perform it, the more positive outcomes we're going to have statewide. Now, Kathy, we've talked about getting Yvonne involved again, and this year we were able to get her on the radio side. Talk a little bit about, again, the importance of having her voice, out there with these campaigns.
Oh, again, she does a phenomenal job, and she has that commanding voice. And I just think it resonates with people. I think that when they hear that voice, they stop and turn around and look. Again, Yvonne is very passionate about these type of things that we're granting, and she wants to be involved. So anytime we have an opportunity to utilize her voice here in West Virginia to promote something, and again, Kevin, I've said it several times, people do not have to be an expert to perform CPR. That's why it's important to learn about doing the compressions, calling 911, being prepared, and again, we think that Yvonne did a phenomenal job on the spots, and we anticipate, again, a very good outcome at the end of the campaign.
Yeah, again, her voice is definitely one that gets attention. I mean, that woman should be doing audiobooks if she's not.
I agree.
I'm just saying she could really do it. I've got some photos here we're going to pull up from where we did the presentation this year. And again, it was so exciting to be able to again, continue this partnership with the Charitable Fund. So we got some photos here from our day where we had the official signing, which is always nice to be able to look at that. Again, thank you all so much for hosting that. Your facilities there in Parkersburg are beautiful, by the way. It's such a great place to be. But there, we see our teams together. We had, the TV stations out there. It was a really just nice event. And we just want to remind people, again, these partnerships, they are out there. They're active. They're making a difference. And, again, it's partnerships like this that allow us to continue to get great work out there to the public, whether we're talking to our adults or to our children. And I want to give a shout out to Wendy and Mary on our youth markets team. They have been outstanding getting it out there. They are road warriors if ever there were, and they are out there happily talking about these things with your kids that are in school. They're talking to them, and that's awesome to know. Well, Kathy, we've talked about this partnership. It's gone on now for so many years. What is it about the American Heart Association's mission that keeps Highmark connected to what we're doing?
Well, I think you're current. I think that you're current on topics. I think that, you have a wealth of knowledge. And you talked about it. You're pulling from not only West Virginia knowledge and everything that we know about West Virginians, but it's also a national base. So I think that that's what brings us together. Kevin, I had mentioned earlier on that when the Charitable Fund launched in 2021, went into it going, hey, we're going to be offering grants, really didn't know what to expect. And what we found out was the need is certainly greater than the funding that we had. I mean, we've touched on, as I mentioned earlier, everything from oral and dental health to substance use disorder to social determinants of health, and you touched on it. We're doing two major projects in West Virginia to address food insecurity.
Yes.
One with WVU Medicine and one with Vandalia Health and Mountain Health and Marshall Health. So, those programs are impacting the lives of West Virginia, and that's what we hope to be able to do through the Charitable Fund for Health for the next many years. And I'm hoping that the American Heart Association is always there as a great partner with us. Well,
I tell you, the social determinants of health thing is such a major thing for us nationally, and especially in the Appalachian Belt. And I know it's very important for what Highmark is doing, especially, again, being in the Appalachian region. And I'm so thrilled to hear you're addressing things like food insecurity, because that is something that we don't think about it, but there is food insecurity. There are food deserts all over West Virginia. And the one that I always point out to people, and they're always shocked when I do it, but I'm sitting here in the studio at the Culture Center here at the State Capitol Complex. And we are on the east end of Charleston. And the east end of Charleston is an actual food desert. There is no grocery store here in this area. In the facility where we make the bills and laws for our state, you're sitting in a food desert. So food insecurity is everywhere, including even in our urban areas. It's not just rural, it's definitely urban. It's a statewide issue. Well, it's a nationwide issue for that matter. So I love that you're addressing that, because it is something that we look at very seriously, and we've been working in our community impact work as well to help address this too. So again, food insecurity a big thing, and I'm so glad that you all have really taken up the mantle on that, because it is something that impacts countless West Virginians.
Yes, yes.
Well,
Agreed.
when we're looking at, just kind of wrapping up here, and again, thank you so much for the time today. When you look at partnerships like these, I guess for, your final thoughts on these kinds of partnerships, the value that you find in these kinds of partnerships. And again, I know you're not just working with us, you're working with other organizations. The value of that for Highmark, though, what does that look like for you?
Well, I'll tell you, our Charitable Fund for Health has independent fund advisors. These are advisors that look at grant requests. They are not Highmark employees. They are bankers and lawyers and everyone in our community. So when we get grant requests, like the ones that we have with the American Heart Association, we take them to the board, we present them. And the thing that I think that they are looking for, that they have said over and over again, is we are looking for projects that have proven success.
Yes.
And the American Heart Association has a proven success, as do many of our projects that we're working on. But that's why we like working with the American Heart Association. And I am quite certain that there are other topics. Kevin, we talked about it in the beginning. We're both very passionate about serving West Virginia and improving the lives and the well-being of the citizens of West Virginia. So I'm sure that there's many, many more things to come down the pike. And I can't wait to be on here again and talk to you about the new things that are coming up in 2025.
Absolutely. It's one of those things, again, we appreciate the partnership, Kathy, because it really does matter. These partnerships help us to get out and get the word out there. They allow us to move the needle. And as you said, we're seeing the results. And it's so nice to have a CPR focus this year. It is something that we are so really pushing out there on a national level. So we're so grateful to have that support here, because, again, in a rural state like West Virginia, CPR really can genuinely mean the difference in life and death. And we know that for every minute that you're not getting help, if you have a cardiac arrest, your chances of survival decrease about 10%. So within 5 minutes, you got a 50-50 chance. And if it takes EMTs 35 minutes, 45 minutes to get to you, if you're not getting that help, it can make, it really can make all the difference in the world. Yeah. So we're so thrilled to have your support on that. Again, Kathy, thank you for the time today. We are so glad to have you here. And as always, my friend, it's great to talk with you. It's always a pleasure to have you on. So I wish you the best of luck with your events coming up this weekend. And thank you again for everything you're doing across the state.
Thank you, Kevin. Again, you have a great, wonderful day. I can't wait to work with you again in the future. And let's keep that CPR beat going and staying alive.
Yes, ma'am. That is absolutely the name of the game. Well, that is going to bring this episode of From the Heart to a close. I want to say a special thanks to Kathy for joining us today. The Highmark West Virginia Charitable Fund does amazing work, and we are thrilled to be recipients of that so that we can keep putting the work out there to you, our folks in the community. Well, again, if you'd like to know more about what we've talked about today, you can always reach me at kevin.pauley@heart.org. You can also find us on Facebook at AHAWV, and on Instagram and Twitter, you can find us at AHA_WV. Helping keep you informed on the Library Television Network, I'm Kevin Pauley. Here's wishing you good health for a happy heart.